Back in 2015, Nintendo released a little game that you might have heard of called Splatoon for the original Nintendo Wii. Now, this is a brand new IP from one of the biggest game makers in the industry at a time that they were struggling with the Nintendo Wii U. Now, I remember back in E3, I think it was 2014, I actually played Splatoon before it launched and felt that it had a lot of promise. Now, I didn't see what Splatoon could be as the juggernaut that it is right now in the multiplayer gaming space, cultivating a whole huge new fan base of people that just love third-person multiplayer action on the Nintendo Switch. And I didn't think that it'd be something to where other developers would try to copy in one way or another. Now, we've seen Nintendo have franchises like Super Smash Brothers, obviously Mario, and many other games that developers have taken inspiration from, but Splatoon is one of the games that we haven't really seen too much until now. In comes Foamstars. This is a Square Enix developed PlayStation exclusive across the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. It is a game that very much combines the element of what makes Splatoon so great in terms of inking areas or foaming different areas and activating powers in order to dispatch of your foes with various different game modes as well. But one of the things that I think is the key when it comes to Splatoon is the functionality of the game, how easy it is to follow, to see. The basic nature of the character models, the design, the layout lends to things getting chaotic and hectic, but it not being too difficult to see what's going on. And I think in all of the graphics hoopla and the stuff that happens in today's modern day, that's one thing I feel based off these reviews and my own gameplay that Foamstars, at least the developers, didn't quite understand. I think that they really made a mistake when it comes to this, and we're going to break down exactly what happened with Foamstars on the PlayStation 5 and the PlayStation 4. But we're going to be looking at the PlayStation 5 reviews. Now, before we get into it, what's good, everyone? OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell to get my videos first. Now, let's go ahead and jump right into the reviews, 5 being mixed and 1 being negative. So mixed is anywhere between, I think, like 50 something or so and up to about 70. And then of course, negative is like below that. So right now, Foamstars on the PlayStation 5 is sitting at a 59 Metascore. So that's not where you want to be. It's got a yellow rating, which means just mixed, 59, almost 60, but I think the issue here with this game, and I feel that Square Enix was very smart, but the issue that I saw when I played, that things were just too crazy and hectic on screen, plus it takes some of the elements from Overwatch as a hero shooter and tying down your specials and gear and everything to a specific character over what Splatoon does, where you essentially have just a default character that you create and then you can customize that with gear to change it up. So that is a very big distinction, and that might have doomed this game a little bit, and we'll get into it a bit more here. Now, the highest score is a 70. There is no scores right now on Metacritic that are higher than a 70 that is came in. And remember, this was a straight to PS Plus game. We didn't know the distribution model that was going to happen with this game. We didn't know about it until recently. And then they said, hey, it's going to PS Plus. And I think that was smart from Square Enix, because I don't think anybody was actually going to drop 30, 40, 50, $60 plus for this type of game. So the highest score is a 70. We're going to start off with those from Screen Rant. They gave it a 7 out of 10 and had this to say: there is so much good to say about Foamstars. With its quirky characters and cheerfully energizing feel, while at launch the matches do not feel entirely balanced, that will even out with time. Yet the microtransactions look as though they could only get worse. Now, what he's talking about there, for those who don't know, is that Foamstars, yes, it's PS Plus. I don't know what the price is. If you just buy it separately, I'll have it up on the screen, or I'll try to find that. But the microtransactions in this game are insane. Like, there are so many different microtransaction packs, whereas if you're comparing it to its competitor, I mean, Splatoon, it's like free gear all over the place, right? You got Splatfest, you got gear, you got all sorts of things. And Foamstars seems to say, we're not going to do that. We're going to do it this way to try to kind of nickel and dime people when it comes down to it. So I think that is also a big mistake, especially when Splatoon is out there for people to play. Yes, this is an exclusive Switch that is an exclusive Splatoon, but at the same time, you want people playing the game. Why are you going to play it if it has all these crazy microtransactions and doesn't have content as good as what Splatoon offers if people have options for both consoles and both games? Now, let's get into the next one from Push Square. They gave it a 7 out of 10 and had this to say. Foamstars is a colorful, unique, and entertaining shooter. The modes and characters on offer at launch are fun twists on genre staples, and the central foam mechanic is a playful addition with some potential for strategy. It's lighthearted, fast-paced fun with plenty of style, while the steep microtransactions and the so-so co-op missions keep it from being squeaky clean. There's a lot to like about this bubbly multiplayer title. I mean, if the puns weren't more apparent there from Push Square, I mean, goodness gracious, like, I would maybe go with maybe 1. This man went with like 3 or 4. Anyway, Push Square, 7 out of 10. That is a Sony type of site, so understandable. Next up is from CG Magazine, a 6 out of 10, and they had this to say. Foamstars isn't terrible, but its uninspired gameplay, deficit of content, and obscene monetization make it a forgettable experience. Now, we're 3 reviews in, and everyone has mentioned the problem with the microtransactions. That is a big problem with a multiplayer shooter when there are a bunch of other options where you don't have to worry about those microtransactions and all of that. So this is going to be a problem for the life of the game when people see that. Next up is from Eurogamer, a 6 out of 10. They said this: Foamstars is a serviceable paintballer in the vein of Splatoon, lathered with some wild lore and underwhelming hero shooter elements. So that's where the Overwatch comes in. People haven't really talked about that too much, but that's kind of where like the game plays like Overwatch, because the characters are tied to a certain like class and specials and all that. Not like Splatoon, which I explained before, but not like Splatoon where you can actually get different types of gear and customize your avatar that you use. This one is tied to a hero shooter, and I feel that hero shooters in particular can be tricky to navigate, right? They can be very tricky to navigate, and I think that they picked a hero shooter to where they lock down the gear and all that, so then they can do like the whole skins, microtransactions, and stuff like that, whereas Splatoon, it's once again free or you unlock it in the game. So that's the biggest issue that I see here with this game. That decision to make it more like Overwatch hero shooter and lock down with microtransactions is going to be the undoing of this game in the long run. Now, next up, we have the last mixed review from Game Reactor UK. They gave it a 5 out of 10 and had this to say. Maybe Square Enix and Toy Logic can fix this and polish off the worst flaws with updates in a typical live service style. Maybe, but I don't think so. The problems are, as I see it, too deeply buried under the bath foam, and it's a shame anyway, because despite Foamstars looking like an amateur project from Fortnite creative mode, I've still had a bunch of fun matches with good friends. The experience has, apart from some connectivity issues in the matchmaking, also been exceptionally stable and bug-free, and the city pop jazz that highlights both matches and menus is always crazy catchy. If you have had PlayStation Plus, this is a quote-unquote free to download, so there is an opportunity to test it if the slightest craving arises. However, I would hardly recommend a purchase or subscription just for this. So I think that's a fair assessment of everything here. Interesting that Toy Logic is the one that did this. I did not know about that. Square Enix kind of trying to dip into the bag there of developers that they've had to work on various different franchises for them. But yeah, I think that that's the issue once again when it comes down to it. There is some fun to be had. There are some things that are good about it that they take from different hero shooters or take from Splatoon or different multiplayer shooters. But the biggest issue is because there's just kind of like an unpolishedness to the game overall. Now, next up, this is the worst review so far, at least rated review so far from TRG. They gave it a 4 out of 10 and had this to say. Cute characters and a handful of promising ideas in its multiplayer matches do little to redeem Foamstars, which is spoiled by terrible solo missions, a lack of maps, and excessive monetization. And I think that pretty much just sums up all of the negativity with this game. There's some stuff that's there, but once again, you compare it to some of the other games out there, the solo missions aren't necessarily in depth or anything. The lack of maps, obviously, you need maps, you need more stuff in order to have variety and different strategies. It's not there right now. As a game that's a PS Plus game, They're not really going to probably have a big investment because they don't know how it's going to do. Lack of maps is a problem, and the monetization practices is just going to drive you away. What are you trying to earn in the game when everything is monetized so heavily? You're not grinding for that next piece of gear or grinding for that next thing. I mean, you can, but really they're telling you, hey, buy it instead, right? Buy it instead. It's a completely different vibe, and I hate to bring up Splatoon so much, but you kind of have to, and that's why I discussed the history of Splatoon a little bit beforehand, because this was their inspiration. Clearly, Splatoon was their inspiration for what they're doing here. Now, there are a number of TBD reviews, so to be decided. Metro Game Central, Kotaku, IGN, The Gamer, they all had stuff to say. I do want to go over a couple of those. They weren't scored, but I want to go over what they have to say. So IGN, they said this: frustrating monetization and structure aside, I've had a pretty good time with Foamstars whenever I'm in an actual match. So here's to hoping those issues don't start to drag the whole thing down below the bubbles. There you go, reviews in progress. Next up, The Gamer, TBD as well, said, after the failure of Babylon's Fall, Foamstars feels like yet another attempt from Square Enix to nestle in on the live service market, and one I wouldn't be surprised to see fail. It's a shame, because on a foundational level, there's an aura of Jet Set Radio or Ghost Trick in a cool aesthetic and obscene lore, which in a better world could have been turned into something far less cynical. This is a game where foam has developed into a secretion from individuals who are basically soap-based mutants, and this is the most creative thing you'd have them do. If you get foam from this one, I promise you, you aren't missing out on much. So that's from The Gamer. So very interesting across the board when it comes to what they have to say. Now, when I played the game in the beta, it was tough to even get into a match. I know Splatoon has some connectivity issues. We've had other games have connectivity issues, but it was tough for me to even get into multiple matches. And then when I did get into a match, there was some cool things about the game. It operates very smoothly. It looks slick. There's some good music. There's some good style to it. I think overall the art, I guess AI / normal art, whatever they decided to do with this game, it's good enough. I think that it's cool. But the problem for me is that the screen is such a mess. There's so much stuff because you have verticality in this game. So there's so many walls and different colors and things. It's a bit too complex and in-depth to the point where it just becomes a mess visually on screen. From what I've read, when it comes down to the single player stuff, that's not really good, or the co-op stuff. Obviously, it's lacking a lot of extra content. I don't expect that for a game just starting out, but once again, when you're starting to compare it to other games, you start to compare it to Splatoon, that is just the natural comparison that people are just going to do. And unfortunately for Foamstars, it just doesn't have it. Now, some people are even comparing this. I've seen the Destruction All-Stars, a game that was hyped up as a $70 game at first. Then they started realizing that nobody's going to actually pay $70 for that game, and then they decided to make it into PS Plus. Now, is it going to share the same fate as that game? I mean, it definitely could. Square Enix is known for shutting down their live service games not long after they release, and we've seen it from the biggest IPs that Square Enix has. I think like Nier and Dragon Quest. There's been a bunch of stuff. Even a Final Fantasy Battle Royale game was shut down like a year or so after it came out. So nothing's safe, even the biggest franchises. So I don't expect Foamstars to be a game that is supported for a significant amount of time. It needs a Yoshi P saving / rehaul. If they can save this franchise, maybe they even grab Yoshi P. I bet he's too busy working on Final Fantasy stuff and directing. He's an executive now. But if they can get somebody that could come in and completely save this, I think there's stuff that's redeemable. I think that the gameplay and the shooting is slick. There's some cool ideas in there, but it needs a complete retooling. And I know that's going to be hard to do. And I know that they probably don't want to spend the money to do that. I don't know if it's even worth it. They can just try it out, and then if it doesn't work out 6 months to a year from now, just say, hey, we're done supporting it, but you can still play the game, right? There's different ways to go about it. But I feel if they want to spend a little bit more and they retool how all of this works, I think that there is something redeemable here. But the problem is that there's just such a big hill to climb compared to like Overwatch, or compared to Splatoon, or compared to, heck, even the new Helldivers game that came out. I played that myself, and there's a lot of great things about that. It's visually very clean. It's not necessarily the greatest graphics in terms of face detail and models. It's a AA type of game, but it's visually very clean. You can see exactly what's going on screen. It's basic design when it comes to the enemies. You don't need the best graphics. You don't need all that. You just need a nice, clean interface, good missions, good feeling gameplay content, and not necessarily crazy with the microtransactions and stuff, even though they're in there, but plenty of free content and plenty of stuff that you can grind out and earn yourself. So I think that that's really the issue. They took a wrong angle on this. And I don't know if it can be redeemed or saved, but I'm hoping that something is done, because I do think that there is some redeemable qualities about this game. From what I played, it's just nowhere near as engaging or compelling as some of the other multiplayer games that have came out recently and stuff that's been around for a number of years, like Splatoon. So what do you guys think overall when it comes to Foamstars? Have you picked it up? What do you think happened with the development and with the game? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other videos right here on screen. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.